iCloud. All right, and we're ready to begin. Good morning, everyone. You know, I'm Janet Goldberg, Sisterhood President. I'm here today with my partner in crime with Sisterhood, Joel Gunther, who's going to help with the chat room and any other problems we may have. We're welcoming Rabbi Ed Rosenthal and Shana Cohn from the Repair the Sea program. I just want to thank everybody who has come on today. I just want to speak in regards to sisterhood. We're so proud that we're able to bring programming to you. And that it's been a fabulous year with everything that we've been able to provide. And once again, I just want to point out we've provided everything without any expense to our participants, and we're very proud that we're able to do that. Today's program will be making a generous donation to the Repair of the Sea program, as we do with all of our speakers. So I just want to let you know, and hopefully in the future, as you've seen what we've presented this year, that you'll continue to support the sisterhood programming. Programming always comes either with some creative technique or a great recommendation. And I'd like to thank Ira and Linda Skolnick for bringing this program idea to me, and I ran with it, and it turned around in days. And it was so easy to work with Rabbi Ed and Shana. We've also learned that Shana is Marcy and Ed Libman's niece and granddaughter to Vivian, who may be on the screen today. So that was a super connection. So with that, I'd like to just basically begin the program. I'm going to give a little funny introduction to Rabbi Ed and some information I found out about Shana. So Rabbi Ed Rosenthal is the founder of this program. He was born in St. Louis in a landlocked community, but he had a passion for marine environment that could only be contributed to watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau. We all remember Jack, and the sea hunt as a kid. When he was 16, he asked his parents if he could learn to scuba dive. His mother's response was, if God meant humans to be underwater, he would have given us gills. So it wasn't until a hiking trip in the Sinai during his first year of rabbinical studies that Ed had a chance to snorkel at the Sharm el Sheikh. There he heard the calls of the sirens. And when he returned to the United States to his studies in Cincinnati, he finally got his scuba diving certification. Jewish tradition is filled with deep spiritual teachings about water and sea, yet most Jews have not been exposed to this part of our heritage. And Ed is going to take us on that journey. Working along with Ed is Shana Cohn. Shana, your bio just intrigued me. Shana is a PADI master scuba diver trainer, an SSI Century 100 instructor, and hashtag the Sea Hugger. She was born in Hawaii, so that probably gave it away, growing up snorkeling and free diving. And it's no surprise that Shana is a marine conservation fanatic. Just amazing. It's just so intriguing, all of this. But before she joined this program, she worked the Tikkun Yam, in 2018. She worked as a scuba instructor, dive guide, and conservation co-coordinator of Rainbow Reef Dive Center in Key Largo. She has so many wonderful wonders of the sea, and she's pulled out hundreds of pounds of debris from the water, and she volunteers her time and skills with numerous environmental organizations. One of the things that we're working on at Amuna is our environmental impact, and we have a climate committee, and today Bill Desgain, who's chairing that committee, is joining us as well, and we're co-sponsoring or partnering this program with that committee. So I'd like to turn the program over to Rabbi Ed and to Shana, and they'll take us away on our journey today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. I and Rabbi Ed are so excited to be here with you guys. We have been working on this program for about we together have been working on this program for about 3 years. Ed has been working on this program for what is it, 18 years now, 18,
Something
20
like
years. So it is very thrilling for us to be able to be invited into your community and expand our initiative to repair the sea. We have a couple questions for you before we get started. Does everybody have access to the chat box? If you want to open that up, I'm going to drop a question in there. It's a simple yes or no answer. If you would just give us an answer in the chat box so we know where our audience is. The question I'm asking right now is, are you involved in any marine restoration efforts? No, not yet. Perfect. That's the audience we want. We love preaching to the choir, right? But we want to, our mission as Repair the Sea is to share the spiritual wonders of the sea from a Jewish perspective, and also instill the imperative to act to repair the blue planet. So we are very excited to get people who are not involved on our mission as well. So we got lots of answers. Looks like most everybody is no. We're going to be giving you a couple ways you can get involved in this program. And if you have any questions and this sparks a desire to get involved in the future, then you can always reach out to me or Rabbi Ed in the future. One more question for you guys. We are asking, do you know anything about Judaism's approach to the water? There are tons and tons of Jewish environmental organizations. They're doing amazing work in plastic pollution and climate change and food security. We are the only organization that focuses on the marine environment. So there is not much knowledge out there about Judaism's connection to the water, and that is Rabbi Ed Rosenthal's expertise, his water Torah, as we will be going into. You guys can keep answering that. Oh, the purification by water. That's interesting. Water conservation Israel. There is some really amazing water conservation efforts in Israel for sure. Mayim Hayim has a living waters program. That sounds really interesting. Should definitely look into that.
Mayim Hayim is an amazing organization.
Ooh, of course, Ed already knows about it. All right, we are going to I'm super excited that I'm seeing a lot of no's. That means that we'll be able to have some really sparkling conversations. If you guys have any questions as we go on throughout our presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will then pass them on to Rabbi Ed. I'm going to share the screen so we can get started on our presentation. Real quick, let me do some housekeeping. Oh man, 1, 2, 3. Ed, if you would request remote access from me, please. Apologies for.
Where do I do that, Shayna? Oh,
it's going to be the top of your screen again.
Oh, got it. As you can all see, Shayna advises me on technical issues.
Although I might need some advising myself right now. I am having a computer snafu. One moment. Okay. Apologies all. All right. Okay. We are ready. Ed, if you could do that one more time, please.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, guys, thank you so much for your patience. As Janet said, my name is Shayna Cohen. I am the Community Outreach and Expansion Coordinator for Tikkun Hayam. So if you listen to the session and want to get involved, please reach out to me. My email will be at the end of this presentation. Before we get started, we really need to give thanks to our angel sponsors, the Maurice A. and Thelma P. Rothman Family Foundation. We could not do this without them. So just a big thank you to them. We're going to go a little bit into what we are, who Repair the Sea, or also known as Tikkun Hayam, is. Then we're going to transfer over to Rabbi Ed Rosenthal and talk about a few things we should know about water. Then he's going to discuss a brief overview about nature and Judaism, and then do a deep dive, pun intended, into water Torah. Before we get started, I do want to give you guys a brief overview about who we are. We do a large amount of programming. I sort of already talked about how we are the only organization that ties Judaism to marine restoration efforts. So we do cleanups, dive trips, trips to Israel. We have community-wide cleanup events, coral restoration. These are a couple pictures of our programs we do. But there are 3 initiatives that we'd like to talk to you guys about today that you can bring to your synagogue, to your community. The first one is Reverse Tashlich. Reverse Tashlich is our flagship program. It is a worldwide event that happens on the Sunday between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it is a cleanup initiative where everybody goes to their either a local waterfront or just a local park somewhere in nature, and they pull human sins from the water, hence the Reverse Tashlich. It started as a college program about 5-6 years ago.
Tashlich.
And since then,
sins from the water.
it has expanded. Hey, I'm trying to mute everybody, apologies. Since then, it has expanded to be 850 people in 2019 across 4 countries. So this year, our goal is to double that number. So if Temple Immuno would like to get involved, we have a guidebook to walk you through how to plan your own event. I can help you choose a location, help you with your materials, everything that you need to host this event that people have said really fills you with positive energy. So we'd love to get you guys involved in that. The second initiative that we have is called our Blue Green Initiative. And we have partnered with a brand called Verterra, and Verterra creates 100% compostable cutlery, flatware, any sort of food serving containers. And unlike most compostable cutlery and flatware, these can break down in your backyard. So a lot of the compostable stuff you see on the shelves need a machine or a large composting facility to break down. And these ones are made of palm or wood scraps. So they naturally break down into the environment. And the CEO and the founder of Verterra has given us a wonderful deal. So we have about a 50% discount on the prices for any religious organization that wants to switch over their products. So if you guys are serving meals, this is a great alternative to single-use plastics because you're not going to have that negative impact on the environment. I'm going to throw some links in the chat after this is all done. You guys can access that link. It's really simple. You just order it online. It ships to your door. It's very, very easy to use. The last program I want to talk to you guys about is our Recycled Judaica program. This started as an idea from a college student. I went on to being a 3D printer that sat on my washer and dryer in my 1-bedroom apartment. And now we've actually hired a wonderful 3D printing brilliant mind who makes these gorgeous mezuzot out of recycled water bottles. So every mezuzot has about 2 water bottles in them. So not only does it mark your home as a Jewish home, it marks your home as a Jewish home that cares about the marine environment. And because we make this ourselves, we can customize them to, if you want a logo on them, if you want, to celebrate a bar bat mitzvah, we can make them exactly how you like. And we are going to be expanding our Judaica programs into other things as well, all coming from recycled water bottles and other recycled products. If you guys are interested in that, I will throw the link in the chat box as well. Can consumers like me, us, purchase the compostable goods? Penny, that's a great question. You can. We can't offer you the same discount that we can offer large organizations. But if you are interested in that, my email is shana@repairthesea.org, and I can point you to Verterra, and we can definitely talk because we want to get everybody involved in these compostable goods for sure. If there are any programs that you guys learned about that you would like to get interested in, please reach out to me or find us on our website. Repairthesea.org. I'm going to throw that in the chat, and you can find everything that I talked about in there as well. Now for the meat of the program, the vegan meat of the program, as we say. Rabbi Ed Rosenthal, as Janet already said, is the founder of Tikkun Hayam, and he is going to dive into water Torah. Ooh.
Great. That's interesting. Well, thank you, Shayna, and thank you, Janet and Joelle, for working with us to put this together. And since Shayna has family on the call, and family always wants to shut nachas, you should know she's just incredible in everything, and she's put this whole program together. And really, we couldn't do what we do without her. So thank you for everything for doing this, Shayna. As Janet said, I'm Ed Rosenthal, started Tikkun Hayam as initially as a program to just engage college students, because I do work, my day job is to work for Hillel, and I'm the executive director of the Hillel, the Florida Suncoast in Tampa Bay. And I started it when I was the campus rabbi at Emory in Atlanta, Georgia. It was just a means to engage students. And then I was the Hillel director at Cornell University for 8 years and did the same thing there, but only when I came to Tampa Bay and worked at a small school called Eckerd College, which I understand some local members of the community also belong to or have gone to. Only then, because their biggest major is marine biology, did the program really grow and expand. And as Shayna said, we're moving off campus and now getting into the general Jewish community. As a way of background, as Janet said, I'm originally from St. Louis, and there's not a lot of water. We have the Mississippi River, that was it. And when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, they used to say that the Mississippi was not good for much of anything. It was too dirty to swim in and too clean to park on. So it didn't work. Anyway, a little while ago, I was in Miami Beach, and I was walking the beach early in the morning, and I saw there were people strolling around, and there was a young man with a beautiful dog, and he was throwing a stick into the water, and the dog was happily diving in to get it and bringing it back to him, and he'd throw it some more. And I was watching, and he threw the stick, and the dog went, and the dog got caught in a rip current and was being pulled out and couldn't get out of the rip current. And the young man didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, this little Jewish guy, it was Miami Beach after all, little old Jewish man dove into the water and also got caught in the rip current and caught up with the dog and grabbed the dog. And we all know that with a rip current, you should swim parallel to the shore to get out of it. So he grabbed the dog and he swam parallel to the shore, and then he swam back to the beach. And a crowd of people had gathered by this time, and they were watching this elderly Jewish man bringing this dog, and the dog was unconscious and was lying on the beach. And incredibly, the old Jewish guy starts breathing into the dog's mouth, and then the dog jumped right up, and his tail was wagging, and the young man was just amazed. And he looked at this old Jewish guy. He said, "That's incredible. I've never seen anything like it." He said, "Are you a vet?" And the old man looked at him. He said, "Am I a vet?" He said, "What, are you blind? I'm soaking." I know it really has nothing to do with the presentation, but I thought I would start off just to welcome you all and thank you all for being with us. Yes, so people aren't leaving after that one. Anyway, a little bit about the content before we begin. When we deal with nature, there are generally three approaches. There's the scientific approach, and there's the conservation approach. Now, you'll notice when Shayna gave her introduction, we don't use the term conservation. A lot of people talk about nature conservation. When it comes to the marine environment, we feel that we're beyond the point of conserving the ocean. And so we talk about marine restoration, because what has to be done is we have to restore the sea, because it's in so much danger from degradation. And the third usual way of approaching nature is faith-based environmentalism. So, I mean, every religion has some connection to nature, because from a spiritual perspective, religious traditions across the board view the God as having created the world. And so they see the hand of God or divinity within nature. So faith-based environmentalism is that third approach. But when it comes to the marine environment, there really is only science and conservation or environmentalism. And so what we're trying to do is to raise, for the marine environment, bring that faith-based approach to it. And so for the purposes of what we're going to be doing today, a little bit of explanation. Now, I know that you all have a phenomenal program of adult education at Temple Emunah. And so you make it real easy for me because I don't have to give too much background. Because I want, since this program is based in Jewish text and tradition, I want to really present how we approach Torah study. And we know that when it comes to Torah, you can't read the Torah on the literal level. A lot of religions read the Bible on its literal level. But we know that since the Torah is written originally without vowels, that's not, there's an old medieval Christian theological debate of how many angels could dance on the head of a pin. And, in the Jewish community didn't have that luxury. We were too busy arguing, do you read the word this way or do you read the word that way? And so we don't look at the literal level alone. We also have the hierarchy of Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod, where we do understand it on the literal level, but we also have the halachic level, which deals with Jewish law. We have the Agadic level, which deals with stories and commentaries. And then, of course, we have the highest level of Jewish study, the Sod, which is the Kabbalah. And as we'll learn shortly, when it comes to the environment, much of what we have in our tradition with regard to the environment comes from that perspective of the lower three of Pshat, Remez, and Drash, because we do get some understanding from the literal level, but then we also have the halachic and the agadic aspects of the tradition as well. And we know we can't read the Torah solely on its literal level. If we did, then we would say that the world was created 5,781 years ago, and hopefully we all saw Jurassic Park, and we know that's not the case. So for the purposes of our program, oops, and that's not working. For the purposes of our program, I look to the words of Carl Sagan, who said that the notion that science and spirituality are somehow mutually exclusive does a disservice to them both. As I said, when it comes to the marine environment, it's science or environmentalism. But what we want to do is to bring that spirituality into it. And so much of what this program is based on comes from, oops, did we miss that? I'll get to that. So before we get started, a few things we should all know about water. We think we know about water. It's a very, very significant part of our lives. We drink water every day. We bathe every day. We wash our dishes. We water our yards. Without water, what would we be? So there are a few things that we need to know. Water is the most abundant substance on the earth. Is that moving? Oops, having some trouble here, Shayna. There we go. Nope. Shayna, do I have this? Wait a second. No. Shayna. Sorry, got a little too far ahead. Shayna, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here. I'm trying to unmute myself, but you have control of my computer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Can we go back?
Yes, we can go back.
How do we do that? Oh, thank you.
If you hit the back arrows, I can do that for you.
Okay. All right, there we go. Okay.
Hands off from now on. You have control over it.
I got it? Okay. It's just not working for me, though.
You click on the screen, you should be able to use it.
Okay. There we go. So we got a few things you should know about water. As I said, water is the most abundant substance on the earth. And water is the only substance on the planet that occurs naturally in all three states of liquid, gas, and solid. Nothing else has that unique characteristic. It's one of the three, but this is the only one that exists in all three states. Water is the only liquid on Earth that can sustain life. Think about this. If you put a goldfish in a bowl of milk, it will die. If you put a goldfish in a bowl of orange juice, it will die. If you put a goldfish in a bowl of rum, it will die. It will die happy, but it will die. If you put a goldfish in a bowl of water, it will live. So water is the only liquid on Earth that can sustain life. Our planet, we often talk about going green when we speak about the environment, but we forget that we live on a blue planet. We don't live on a green planet. Our planet is blue. Normally, when you see a picture of the globe, you see the other side, which is where most of where the continents can be seen. This is the Pacific Ocean. It takes up over a third of the entire planet, just the Pacific Ocean. And the ocean produces 50 to 85% of the oxygen on Earth. That's more than all of the rainforest, trees, and plants on the planet combined. We talk about, when we talk about climate change and people talk about reducing carbon emissions, the ocean is the greatest sequesterer of carbon on the planet. And interestingly, more people have walked on the surface of the moon than have reached the deepest point in the ocean, the Marianas Trench. And as I said, water exists in three states. The troposphere, which is the lowest level of Earth's atmosphere, where our climate and our weather is produced, develops, the troposphere is 70% water. It's often referred to as the aerial ocean, because basically there's as much water in the atmosphere at any given time in its gaseous form as there is in the ocean in its liquid form. Something we don't think about, water cannot be carbon dated. In other words, it has no beginning and it has no end. It goes through the hydrological cycle of liquid, gas, and then solid. So it can't be dated. Unlike any physical object, carbon dating goes to a particular point, and then for ancient or prehistoric, there's another way to date physical material, but water cannot be dated. And that the amount of water on the planet today is the same amount of water that was present when the Earth was formed. It changes its state, but in any of those three, it's still water. In other words, H2O. And 97% of the water on Earth is in the ocean. 97%, which means 97% is salt water. We can't use it for human consumption or animal. 2% is frozen in icebergs, glaciers, and the polar ice caps. And only 1% of the water on planet Earth is fresh water. There's another form of water. It's called biological water. The human body, depending on the age of the individual, is anywhere from 60 to 70% water. The human brain is 80% water. Human blood is 92% water. In other words, if you weigh 150 pounds, about 100 pounds of you are water. We're sort of like walking water balloons in a sense. Now, it's a very simple fact. No life exists or comes into existence without water. None. And not just physical life, inanimate. My shirt did not come into existence without water, because water was necessary to grow the cotton or that it's made from. Even my iPhone, our computers, water is utilized in the process. Everything around us requires water in one context or another. Now, to get into the spirituality of the sea, Judaism, the Environment, Water, Torah. For this program, as I said, most of Jewish and environmental teaching comes from either the Pshat, Remez, or Drash levels of Torah study. For this, the vast majority of the teachings that we're going to learn today comes from the Kabbalah. Now, we've all heard about the Kabbalah, but what is the Kabbalah? Well, it's often translated as Jewish mysticism. I never use the term mysticism when it comes to the Kabbalah because mysticism implies magic, and there's no magic in the Kabbalah. There are two definitions that I use when it comes to the Kabbalah. The first is the Kabbalah is the spiritual teachings of Judaism. In other words, the Torah tells us, the Torah and the oral Torah, the Talmud tell us how to practice Judaism. The Kabbalah tells us why. And one of the things that I come across with young Jews all the time working with college students, they say that they're taught, you do this, you don't do this. You eat this, you don't eat this. Here are the holidays, follow the holidays. You don't do this on Shabbos, you do that. And the students say it's dry. I mean, the simple fact is we're losing Jews faster than we can imagine because they don't find that aspect of our tradition necessarily speaking to them. What I hear from young people today is they say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And I say the Kabbalah is the spiritual teachings of Judaism. They love it. The second definition is the cosmology of the universe as presented through the Jewish tradition. So when I speak about the cosmology of the universe as presented through the Jewish tradition, most people, when they think about cosmology, they think of science. The cosmology of science, like Torah telling us how to practice Judaism, the cosmology of science seeks to understand how the universe functions. The cosmology of the Kabbalah isn't concerned with how the universe functions, but rather why the universe functions as it does. Science is how, Kabbalah is why. And that's why I go back to Carl Sagan, that the notion that science and spirituality are mutually exclusive does a disservice to them both. So what we're going to be looking at is much of the Jewish tradition as presented through the Kabbalah with regard to water. Because the simple fact is there's not a lot about it in Torah, literal Torah, as was mentioned before. For most of us, we think of water in the context of the mikveh as a means of purification or as something that we drink or use to irrigate our fields. But from the perspective of the Kabbalah, there's so much more to it. So let me see if I can get the next one. There we go. Here we go. So Judaism and nature. I'm going to just touch on this because I think you all have probably learned enough about Judaism and nature because all of our holidays are agriculturally based. We've got Pesach, which is the springtime festival, Chag HaAviv, and Shavuot is Chag HaBikurim, the Feast of First Fruits. We have Sukkot, the Chag HaSif, the harvest festival, and of course, Tu B'Shvat, the New Year of Trees. So this is all on the surface. We know this. These are holidays that we practice. There are mitzvot that are based in nature. There's Shemitah, which is the sabbatical year where we're commanded to let the land lie fallow. There's the Yovel, which is the Jubilee year where we relinquish ownership of the land. The Bikurim, where we bring our first fruits, and the Peyah, where we don't harvest the corners of our field. All applying because Judaism is based on the agricultural cycle in many ways. Bal Tashchit is another mitzvah, which is the prohibition against needless waste and destruction, which does apply towards the environment. We'll discuss that in a bit. And of course, Sar Ba'alei Chaim, which is a prohibition against causing pain to animals. So Judaism and nature are intrinsically intertwined. Nature is an essential part of our tradition. Now, something that Jewish environmentalists love to look to is that first chapter of the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. And one aspect of our tradition that you probably all know about is called gematria, where every Hebrew letter has a numerical equivalent. So Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, Dalet is 4, and so on and so forth. So Jewish environmentalists love to look at that first chapter of Genesis, where they say that the name of God, which created the universe or created the world as it's presented in Genesis, was Elohim. And then they look to the word Hateva, which means nature, and they see that Elohim, the numerical equivalent in Gematria, is 86, and the same numerical value when you add up the letters of Hateva equals 86. And so what Jewish environmentalists like to look towards is what they say is that, because a lot of people say, how did God didn't create, as I said, 5,781 years ago. God didn't create the world 5,781 years ago. But when you look to this aspect, what it says is not so much God, but the connection, because the nature of Gematria says that when two words share the same numerical value, there's a deeper connection. And what Jewish environmentalists then point to is that this gives an indication that the laws of nature are divine. And so you can even look to evolution. And we could talk about Rabbi Yitzchak ben Shmuel of Akko, who presented in the 13th century that the age of the universe was 15.5 billion years. We can talk about that another time, perhaps. But that means that there's really no contradiction between creation and evolution. And when we see this connection, we can say the laws of nature, which so many people speak of as that's be all and end all of the environment, that the laws of nature are actually divine. But there's a difference. The word for nature in Judaism is actually teva. When you add the definite article, it sort of includes and encompasses everything. So teva is nature, but ha-teva, which is the numerical value of 86, that is what you could look to as the laws of nature, because it's nature in its totality, the definite article. Oops, let me see about that. Now, I too look to that first chapter of Genesis, and that's where we look to creation as the foundation of water Torah. And so we'll look at that chapter, just the first 5 verses, if you don't mind. So the Torah begins, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, v'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom, v'ruach Elohim merechefet al pnei hamayim. And then the big line that everybody thinks about, Vayomer Elohim yehior vayehior. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered on the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, forgive the gender-based terminology. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. Yeah. Now, there's an issue with this. Oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. Forgive me, I'm still working on my technological skills. Does anybody notice anything about this that might be an issue? And if you do, you can unmute yourself and throw it out there. Anybody see an issue with this?
Is that he hovered on the waters, but not that he was throughout and within the waters?
Oh, that's very good. Very good. God hovered on the face of the waters. It's actually al pnei hamayim, on the face of, but that's just a poetic way of saying on the water. That's very good. Anybody else?
In verse 2, there's darkness, but darkness wasn't created yet until verse 3 and 4.
That's right. That's also a very good one. Anything else?
Water was already there.
Yeah. For the purposes of our conversation, that's exactly it. And Rashi, one of our great sages, also recognized that problem. And he says, "V'lo hamikra lehorot seder habriya, lomar she'elu kadmo." It teaches us that the sequence of creation as written is impossible. It says, if you say that scripture indicates the order of creation, he says, tamei al atzmacha, be astonished at yourself, for the water proceeded as it is written, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the water. And scripture did not yet disclose when the creation of water took place. From this we learn that the water preceded the earth. So Rashi recognized that same problem back in the 11th century. So we read up to verse 5. Now let's continue on and look at verse 6. And God said, Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia betoch hamayim, vayehi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. And God said, let there be an expanse. It's usually translated as a firmament. Expanse is I have to admit, I don't know what a firmament is. So I looked it up, and a firmament is an expanse. So it's just not as poetic as firmament. So when God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. What does it mean, the waters from the waters? And God made the expanse and divided the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. And it was so. And you can look in the Hebrew, Vayas Elohim et rakia, vayavdel ben hamayim asher mitachat larakia, uvein hamayim asher me'al larakia, vayichen. So it's this concept that there's an expanse of water, and that the expanse that was above became the heaven, and God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning a second day. Okay, so we've now got the separation between the upper waters and the lower waters, and they've been separated. The upper water is called heaven or shamayim, and the lower water is called the sea. Well, there's just the lower waters. Okay, and there's no term given to the lower waters yet. And there's the second day. Now we're moving into the third day. And God said, let the waters under the shamayim, under the heaven, be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. So dry land appears on the third day, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters, God called yamim, seas. And God saw that it was good. Okay. So we have a problem. Do you see the problem? Verse 1 says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then verse 7 says, Vayas Elohim et harakia, vayavdel ben hamayim asher mitachal harakia, ben hamayim asher me'al harakia. And God made the expanse and divided the waters which were under the expanse from the water that was above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse shamayim. Called it heaven. And there was evening and there was morning, a second day. What's the problem? Do you see the problem in the text? Anybody? If you see the problem, you can unmute yourself.
What about the waters above heaven?
The waters above the expanse, that becomes the heavens. And God called the expanse heaven, Shemaim. So what you're saying, what happened to them?
Yeah, they said if the expanse was heaven, he said it divided the waters below the expanse from the waters above the expanse.
Mm-hmm.
So the waters above the expanse are not heaven, they're something else.
Okay, very interesting. Anybody else?
Yeah, in the beginning could be interpreted to mean the whole 7 days, but if it isn't interpreted that way, then there's a definite contradiction.
Yeah, Bereshit in itself, you're right, is a troublesome word, and volumes have been written just about the one word in its context. That's good. Anybody else?
Well, it says in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, but then he doesn't create the earth really until later on. So it's when is it actually happening?
That you're absolutely right. Can I push you one step further?
Sure.
Is it only the earth which is created later?
Well, we don't know when the water was created.
That's the problem. Because Shamayim, it's the same word. Bereshit bara Elohim et Shamayim. God created the heavens. And later on it says, and God called the upper firmament Shamayim, called it heaven. So recognizing that, Shemayim cannot be created twice. It's created on the first day and then again on the second day. So the question must be asked, what is the difference between the two statements of Shemayim? The Shemayim which is created on the first day and the Shemayim that's created on the third day or on the second day. Because clearly you can't create something twice. So what is the difference? I would present to you that Shemayim of the second day clearly represents the upper waters of the troposphere, the aerial ocean. Remember the 70% of water in its liquid state. The Shemayim of the first verse is distinguished by the definite article, just as the difference between Teva, nature, and Ha-Teva being the laws of nature, because it's an all-encompassing the nature. I would present to you that the difference between Ha-Shemayim and Shemayim is profound. That Shemayim is the troposphere, the upper levels of our atmosphere, water in its liquid state. The Shemayim of the first verse with the definite article, to me, represents the totality of water. Remember, water is the only substance which exists naturally in all three stages of liquid, gas, and solid. So as you presented before, creating the earth, ha'aretz, as opposed to dry land, which is referred to as aretz on the third day, the difference between that could be ha'aretz is the planet. The third day is aretz or eretz as dry land or soil or dirt, whatever you want to call it, or rock. The point being, what is the nature of this Shemayim with the definite article? Now, Psalm 115, verse 16, actually mirrors Genesis 1. You'll probably remember this from the Hallel. Hashamayim, Shamayim ladonai, ha'aretz natan livnei adam. The Shemayim is the Shemayim of God, but the dry land was given to humans. So the text clearly shows a distinction between what is God's, Shemayim, and what was given for humans. You know, the Kabbalah teaches that each letter is more than just a symbol that transmits sound. We know, as we learned before, that that each Hebrew letter also has a numerical value, and the Kabbalah teaches that when two words share that same numerical value, there's a deeper connection. But the Kabbalah also teaches that even the shapes of the letters, the shape of the letters convey meaning. So if you look at the word Shemayim, what do you see? Clearly, you see the word mayim, which means water, but Shemayim is water plus a shin. And what do you see in the shin? Anybody?
Looks to me like flow lines of a river or something. Or
Sorry?
wave.
You see a division.
Yeah, some people say, yeah, it looks like water, like waves. It does look like waves. You're right. It looks like waters, in Ecclesiastes, it says all rivers run to the sea. So you might say, oh, look, here are rivers running to the sea. Yeah, that's a possibility. What else do you see?
You see
Shaddai.
You could see Shaddai in that as well. Yes. What else?
see a division
A division of what?
of the two kinds of water.
What do you mean?
It could symbolize the Mayim and Shemayim.
That's also a possibility, but there are three lines on the shin.
But the spaces between them are the
Oh,
two
you're looking at the
waters.
spaces, and that's beautiful because the Kabbalah says that on certain levels you can even read the white behind the black letters. So you're looking at the space. I'm looking at the lines. You're looking far deeper at the space between them. Very good.
Gas, solid, liquid.
I would present that Shemayim is water in all three states of liquid, gas, and solid. And that when you add the hay, you include the totality. And that all of this, you have Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. You have in the beginning, Elohim creates the planet. And Hashemayim, or Hashemayim first, which congeals together as the planet. And is this Shemayim, the totality in all three stages existing simultaneously as one, that is the Shemayim. And it is this Shemayim which precedes absolutely everything. In the text, the only thing which preceded Hashemayim is Elohim, which is God. That's the only thing that preceded Hashemayim. Now, in Psalm 95, verse 5, it's a beautiful passage. Asher lo hayam v'hu asahu. The sea is God's. Hebrew is a beautiful language, and Hebrew loves acronyms. Acronyms, just to refresh your English grammar, where you take multiple words and you make a single word out of the first letter of each of the words. So UNICEF, United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. They're all over the place. I'm going blank in English, but in Hebrew, they're all over. Like,
Scuba.
Sorry?
Scuba.
What is it?
Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus.
Oh, thank you, Shayna. Of course. How could I forget? Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. In Hebrew, it's everywhere. So names are generally turned into acronyms. So like Rashi, Rabbi Shimon Yitzchaki, or Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. They take the first letters and turn it into a word unto itself. So if you look at this verse from Psalm 95, Asher lo hayam, the sea is God's, and you turn it into an acronym, you get Elohim. Now, what did I say at the very beginning? The biggest challenge in the Jewish tradition is because the Torah in its original form is without vowels. If you read the Torah in the synagogue, the hardest part about reading the Torah is that it's not vowel. There's no vowels. So you have to be very careful. But that's another legitimate form of Torah study, because the rabbis have, in many parts of the Torah, have looked at words and said, you can read it this way or you can read it this way, giving it the text a completely different meaning, but giving a very valid and pertinent lesson to be learned from the text. So there are many instances where the rabbis say, don't read it this way, Ela, like don't read in the V'ahavta, Vishinantam levanecha. It says, don't read it vanecha, Ela bonecha. Don't teach it to your children, banecha, but read it as bonecha, your builders, the ones upon whom your future is built. So there are many examples of that in the tradition, where placing different vowels to words in the Torah give a different meaning. So we take Asher lo hayam, we turn it into an acronym, it spells Elohim. And if you change the vowels of Elohim, you will get El Hayam. God is the sea. Now, I'm not presenting that we should worship the sea. However, when we look at Bereshit bara Elohim, at Hashemayim, and this Shemayim, we're talking about the totality of the hydrological cycle and all water in all of its. Oh, remember at the very beginning, water cannot be carbon dated. It has no beginning and it has no end. What do we say about God? We refer to God as the Ein Sof. The Kabbalah speaks of Haor, the light, as the Ein Sof, that which is without end. So Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashemayim. And it's this Elohim, which is the only thing which preceded Hashemayim. Remember what I said at the beginning. The Kabbalah presents the cosmology of the universe as presented through our tradition. Now, very briefly, I normally teach a 12-week course on this. So I'm going to do this while standing on one foot. According to the Kabbalah, before the physical universe came into existence, there was what is referred to as Haor, the light. And it's referred to as light because that's the closest our human comprehension can understand to what this entity was, or is, because light emanates out. Light does not contract in itself. And so the Kabbalah teaches that before everything was Ha'or, the light. And the light contained within it everything that ever is, was, or ever will be in its non-corporeal spiritual state. Non-corporeal meaning without a body, without physicality. In other words, the light contains the spiritual essence of everything that ever is, was, or ever will be. And it is infinite. Now, infinite is a difficult concept for us to comprehend because we are finite beings living in a finite world. So as soon as we hear the word infinite, we immediately put boundaries upon it. But the light, the infinite, endless emanation of energy that contained everything that ever is, was, or ever will be, that was before the creation of the physical universe. And the essence of this light was to give, to share, because it contained everything. And just as light emanates out, if you go into a darkened room, a darkened concert hall, and stand on the stage and light a match, if you're in the very back row of this black auditorium, the light from the match emanates out and you will see it. That's the nature of the light. It emanates out and it gives. And according to the Kabbalah, the problem with that was there was nothing with which the light could share all that it had. So the light created an equally infinite vessel to receive all that the light had to share. So the infinite light created an infinite vessel that could contain everything. And the vessel is the infinite desire to receive. So the infinite light of sharing, the infinite vessel desire to receive together make up what the Kabbalah refers to as the Ein Sof. And then I won't get into it, but the creation of the vessel is the only act of creation that ever took place according to the Kabbalah. Everything after that is merely an evolutionary process of cause and effect. The light was the primordial cause that created the vessel, and the vessel was the effect. Light is the cause, vessel is the effect. Everything from that point on becomes cause and effect, which leads to what the Kabbalah refers to as the tzimtzum, the shattering of the vessel, which leads to the creation of the physical universe. So the light and the vessel, the infinite vessel together, make up the Ein Sof. If you want to put terminology to this, you can say the light is God, and the vessel is the infinite soul of everything that exists, that came into physicality with the Tzimtzum, or with the Big Bang. That's, in a nutshell, the cosmology of the universe. In other words, everything in our physical world, according to the Kabbalah, is a mere reflection, like 1%. It's nothing. You look at yourself in the mirror, and the mirror reflects you. But it's nothing more than a one-dimensional image. It doesn't convey your essence. It doesn't convey anything below the surface, let alone your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, anything. So according to the Kabbalah, this world is a mere reflection of true reality of the spiritual essence. I always break it down into 1% physical universe and 99% metaphysical. And that 99% is the true reality of the Ein Sof. So the question then became, if everything in this world is a physical manifestation, a reflection of the true reality in the Ein Sof, what then in our world is the manifestation of Ha'or, the light, the primordial cause of everything? And, oops, I have to click. And Sefer HaBahir 126 states explicitly, or Hachayim Shamayim, the infinite light is, in this world, the life of water. In other words, and for lack of a better term, as I said, the infinite light can be referred to as God. In other words, according to the Kabbalah, the manifestation of God in our world is water. And to solidify the point, Genesis 1 attributes the creation of everything to Elohim. Light and dark, day and night, the sky, the sea, the sun, the moon, the stars, all marine and terrestrial life, plants, and humans. Everything is attributed to Elohim. And Sefer HaBahir states explicitly that water is the manifestation of the light in our world. So, in short, Genesis 1, God, Elohim, created everything. You know, I generally don't use the term God, incidentally, because it's sort of a trigger. I mean, my mother, she should rest in peace, thought God was an old man with a long white beard on the top of Mount Sinai. I told her, Mom, I've been there. He's not. So I will refer to the deity or the light as Elohim in this context. Now, there's one other point that gets overlooked. The end of verse 2, V'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. And in virtually every English language translation, every translation, you will see that translated as, and the Spirit of God hovered on the face or on the surface of the water. Now, somebody mentioned that before, that the Spirit of God was on the water. There's a problem, and this is rather bold and chutzpahdik of me, but I would present to you that every single English translation of this verse is wrong. Because if you know your Hebrew grammar, you can see my cursor, the word merachefet means to hover. But grammatically, that verb is written in the present tense. The Spirit of God is on the water. It's always translated as was because it's a simple assumption that we assume creation took place in the past, which it did. However, Baruch Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim is present tense. In other words, nowhere in the text does it say that God created water. And the answer is hiding in plain sight. The Spirit of God is on the water. It was on the water, it is on the water, and it will always be on the water. Elohim, Ha'or, is Chayim Shalmayim. The light is manifest in our world as water. Elohim is water. I'm going to go back. Let me go back to that because I want to talk about just a little bit more. It's interesting to me that if this is the case, it pains me to think that this, which is the manifestation of the light in our world, is treated like a garbage dump. 200 million tons of raw sewage is pumped into the ocean every year. 500 pounds of plastic enters the ocean every minute around the world. You know, if somebody were to vandalize, God forbid, Temple Emunah, your building, you would be in an uproar. You'd call the police, you'd call the newspaper, you'd have a reporter out there for the evening news. If somebody, God forbid, spray painted a swastika on your building. Yet we desecrate and we violate and we pollute and we destroy that which is the physical manifestation of the light of the divine in our world every day, and nobody bats an eye. You know, when the cathedral in Notre Dame was on fire and burned 2 years ago, I mean, they raised hundreds of millions of dollars in days to restore it, a building. Yet we don't think about our relationship to the water. And so what we're trying to do is to show the deep spiritual connection from our tradition. This is the manifestation of the light in our world. But it presents us with a fundamental problem. You know, we Jews, let me see if I can get this to play. Did I get it? Yes. Let me close that out. The age-old question is still relevant in our day. Did God create humans in the divine image, or did humans create God in ours? As a Jew personally who accepts our tradition, for me, the answer is clear. God created humans in the divine image. But God also created the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that walks, crawls, and slithers on the earth. All are in the divine image. Every majestic oak tree, every fruit tree, and every humble scrub, all are created in the image of God. We just wear different outer garments. All are water. Water is what we share in common with every living being. Water is what unites us. And the Sefer HaBahir was explicit. The light is water. Just as a family shares the same DNA, all creation shares the same water. All of creation is interconnected by water. Water is the manifestation of the divine in our world. Water has always been here. It has no beginning and it has no end. It is Ein Sof. It is infinite and without end. The water in every creature at one time or another has been in the ocean, in a river, in a cloud, in a whale. It's been a raindrop, a snowflake, an icicle, or a worm. And when we recognize this, then we will see the humble equality of everything and the true and sacred unity of all creation. And that's what we try to present. When we recognize this, when we can recognize that everything is united through the water and that there is no difference, just the outer garment, this is the key to preserving the world and to removing hatred and discrimination and prejudice. When we recognize that we are all one. And what do we say? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. There's no greater unifying force on our planet than water. Every living being is mostly water. You know, if you take an eyedropper with water and you drop a single drop into the ocean, that one drop becomes the ocean. You can no longer separate it. The unity of God, the unity of the light is manifest in our world as water. And it would be appropriate for us to approach it in such a way. And that's that. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Actually, Shayna, let's get rid of the screen and bring everybody up in as a gallery view. So if anybody has any questions, thoughts, or comments, we can see your beautiful faces. Any questions, thoughts?
I just want you to know, Ed, that somebody thought your joke was great.
Oh, good. Thank you. I couldn't hear him. so I thought, I'm glad you liked it. I tried that on my students once and they didn't understand because none of their grandparents have that Eastern European accent. So
Tony says this is so beautiful and moving. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you, Tony.
Marilyn says it's beautiful and thought-provoking.
Thank you. That's what we want. This is something that really, when we think about water, we generally think of it in our tradition as a purifying agent, as Mayim Chaim. You know, and the organization that you all have in Boston, Mayim Chaim, is tremendous, bringing mikveh back. But when we think of water as a purifying agent for mikveh, now you understand, because really, why is water a purifying agent? Why not milk? Because frankly, a milk bath would be pretty awesome. Why not Jell-O? A Jell-O bath sounds pretty awesome too, now that I think about it. Why water? Why? That goes back to what we said before. Water is the only liquid that sustains life. We don't think about it in those contexts, but water is what every religion, when it thinks about purification, is through water. But they don't address the question, why is water a purifying agent? Now I hope you understand. Why is water a purifying agent? Because water is the manifestation of the light.
And with that, I have one more question for you all.
Yes.
Phil is saying that an equally inspiring perspective is Octopus Teacher on Netflix. Definitely.
It's fantastic. You must watch Octopus Teacher.
Absolutely.
And I would also, if you're on Netflix watching, it really is. If you're watching on Netflix and you're watching My Octopus Teacher, also watch a new documentary that just came out last week entitled Seaspiracy, because it really points out how disgraceful humanity has treated the ocean. And if we begin to see the ocean as sacred and holy, you'll watch Seaspiracy, and I hope that it will move all of us to change our behaviors towards the water.
And on that note, I'm gonna drop another question in the chat. And this question is, do you feel more motivated to repair the sea after this presentation? While you guys are answering that, Rabbi Ed, we have a question. Why would you want to scatter our ashes in the ocean?
That's an interesting question. First of all, because in Judaism, traditionally, we don't cremate. But if somebody wanted to, I don't want to be cremated, but I told my wife, just dump me in the ocean. Take me out on a boat and dump me. I'll feel very comfortable there. Many people want to have their ashes scattered in the water. It makes sense. I want to be in the water when I die. I'd rather feed the fish. It's more adding more nutrients to the water. Phyllis, you have your hand up.
I do, and I want to share something with you that I have never shared publicly before. And you're wanting to be, as your words were, dumped in the water. I lost a daughter that many of you know, and Barbara died when she was 50 years old from cancer. And that was a long time ago. And her request that we honored as a family was that she be buried in the Caribbean Ocean between the shores of a place called French Cap and a home that she shared with her family.
Wow.
There on St. John. And I cannot say how difficult that was to do. But we honored her very wish, and she was buried in the water for all of the reasons you have just stated.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Phyllis. Wow. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you for provoking my ability to share it.
One of the things there's a place in Miami called Neptune's Reef. And Neptune's Reef is a man-made reef where they place ashes of people who've been buried in containers on an artificial reef, and coral grows on it and attracts sea life. I reached out to them a while ago and asked if they do full body interments, and they said no, but they were exploring it. It was almost prohibitively expensive. But one of the reasons, my father, he should rest in peace, and my mother also, she should rest in peace. They both passed away. And they're buried in St. Louis. And I went back a few years ago to visit them. And, my parents live on in my heart every day. And I see them because they're on my screensaver. So I see my parents every day, and I think about them every day. And I still talk to them every day. But I went to my parents' graves, and I felt nothing. They weren't there. I didn't feel anything. I feel them in my heart every day, in my home when I see their pictures. By burying your daughter at sea, I would imagine that every time you go to the ocean, you can feel her.
This is exactly what her son said to me one day. He loves going back to St. John because every time he goes into the Caribbean, his mother hugs him.
Wow. Oh my God. Wow. Phyllis, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Wow. Shana, were there some other questions in the chat that I didn't say?
There are, yes. Ruth would like to know if we are sharing this with other theologians.
Shana and I spend all of our time on this, and Shana has just created a new YouTube channel where we're putting videos out. And I think you can put that in the chat as well if people want to check it out, Shana. And she's producing new videos, and we're trying to get the word out. But as Shana will tell you, I'm really not that great at marketing or promotion. So if you share this with any of your friends, please, hopefully we can keep getting the word out. I will say, I have a meeting tomorrow with the Operational Effectiveness Committee of the United Synagogues of Conservative Judaism. I'm going to present to them my hope that they will adopt our blue-green initiative for the entire conservative movement. If we could get every conservative synagogue off of single-use plastic products, I think that would be a tremendous first step to getting the word out about this and letting people know. I haven't really shared it with other theologians. I sometimes fear that this might be a little heretical for many people, because again, we're not saying that water is God or Elohim. We're saying that water is the manifestation of the divine in our world. So some people might find it a little much. We're trying to share it as much as we can.
I think some serious scholars might be very interested in the, gematria and the very specific things that you shared about the Hebrew language and how it gives your argument strength.
Thank you.
We have another question. I'll take this one, where Donna's asking, how do you feel about underwater mining? It's a great question. It's very pertinent to today.
Shayna?
Yeah, I'm actually
You answer, Shayna.
about this question. I feel as though underwater mining is not the route we should take in order to supplement our green future. They've discovered incredible organisms. For those who don't know, underwater mining is taking nodules that have metals such as cobalt, nickel, anything we need for like batteries in the solar or electric vehicle industry, and they are pulled out of the deep sea. So bottom of the ocean, which has been evolving for millions and millions and millions of years under intense pressure in dark light. So you're not going to find these organisms that are down there anywhere else in the world. And by pulling up these nodules, they're going to disturb that ecosystem and potentially smother all of these organisms. They just found an organism in the Clarion Clipper zone, which is one of these areas they're thinking about mining that can sequester. It's a bacteria that can sequester carbon dioxide. So they don't know what it does with the carbon dioxide, but it is a natural tool to pull carbon dioxide out of the ecosystem. So the intention of the mining industry is to pull up these metals to supplement a greener future, when I personally believe that, and based on our my Jewish background as well, believe that everything that we need has been given to us in this world if we look for it in the right way, and that we need to work with the ecosystem to create a sustainable sort of mutualistic future, and that underwater mining is not the option for that. Great question.
Yep.
We had another question. Joelle said, yes, more interested in repairing the sea after this presentation, but what should I do?
Shayna, that's yours.
Okay. There are some wonderful, simple ways you can get involved. I know a lot of marine restoration has been really focused recently on the consumer aspect, right? So purchasing from companies that are going to be protecting the environment, decreasing your single-use plastic, whether that's buying your own water bottle, not using straws, bringing your own reusable cutlery with you. We do sell all those products on our website if you're interested. There is also, if you ever go to the ocean, or body water, make sure you're wearing sunscreens or moisturizers that don't have these products that block the UV light chemically, because those products can get into the water and then actually impact the photosynthesizing abilities of animals in the ocean. So there are what they call reef safe sunscreens. If you ever go to the sea, I recommend looking into those. I would also encourage you guys to get involved politically as well. There's only so much we can do as consumers. So getting knowledgeable on a local level about what is going on in your area, in your state, in your country, and what legislation is going through that's either going to support or hinder the restoration of the ocean. This is something we as Tikkun Hayom are getting more involved in. So if you guys want to stay updated on that, and head over to our website and get on our email list, and we will keep you guys updated. And then the number one thing you guys can do is share this information with other people. The more people who are aware of this, the more people who are knowledgeable and sharing it with more people, you know, it's like a pyramid scheme, the more people that we can get involved in repairing the sea. And
there's one more thing that I would add to that, although this is the one that nobody wants to hear, but you know, as activists, it has to be said. And it's especially difficult for Jews if you keep kosher. Reduce your consumption of fish. The simple fact of the matter is the greatest factor of the degradation of the ocean is overfishing. We are raping the ocean on a daily basis, trillions, and I use that is the accurate term. It's in the trillions, the number of fish that are removed from the sea every year. I'm a vegetarian. I haven't tasted meat in 34 years, but I would eat a cow right now before I would eat a fish. We don't realize it. It's the unspoken truth that people don't want to acknowledge. 300,000 dolphins are killed every year as bycatch by the fishing industry that just get thrown back dead into the ocean. 300,000 dolphins, 100 million, every year, 10 to 15 people are killed by sharks every year. At the same time, 100 million sharks are killed per year for shark fin soup in Asia. And not just in Asia. If you go to a Chinese restaurant and there's shark fin soup on the menu, tell them to remove it. So overfishing is probably the greatest threat to the ocean today. So the hardest thing to do, it's easy to pick up. I pick up litter every day on my walks. We regularly have waterfront cleanup programs. We have dive against debris. The hardest thing of them all is to reduce your consumption of seafood.
Joel, I would like you to explain bycatch. And real quick, I would love to give a big thanks to Joel for championing composting at your temple. It's super important. Food waste is a big contributor to climate change. So composting is a wonderful step you could take. Yeah. Do you want to take the bycatch question, Ed?
Bycatch, industrial fish, we're not talking about fishing. Somebody goes to the ocean and throws a line in so they can feed their family. We're not even talking about indigenous fishing where fishermen in Africa or Asia or even parts of North America and South America go out and throw a net to catch fish to sell at a local market. There are today about 4.5 million industrial fishing trawlers on the ocean at any given time. And an industrial trawler, there are many different ways that they catch fish. Fish is not only for human consumption. The vast majority is caught to grind up into meal to feed livestock or to feed farm-fed fish. It takes 2 pounds of ground up fish to raise 1 pound of farm-raised fish. So these trawlers, these industrial trawlers go out, and those who fish using a technique called long line, they put out miles and miles and miles, hundreds of miles of fishing line with hooks on it. And it catches anything in its wake. It's usually not a fish that bites it because it's not baited. Like if you went fishing, you put a worm on your hook and the fish eats the worm and gets caught on the hook. These are long, long lines, and they simply dig into anything that they catch. So it may be the targeted fish that they're trying to catch. It also might be a dolphin, a sea turtle, a shark, a seagull, a seal. That's bycatch from long line fishing. With trawlers, they put out nets that are so monstrously huge, you can fit 6 747 jet airliners into an industrial trawler. And it basically catches everything within its grasp. And so it catches dolphins, it's so huge, it catches whales and sharks and anything. And those who do bottom trawling, where they take such a net and weight it down that it goes to the bottom, they drag it across the bottom, taking everything, coral, fish, and then what isn't what they're targeting, they just throw it back dead into the ocean. Anything that's returned back dead into the ocean is considered to be bycatch. So shrimp, for example, which is one of the biggest commercial products out of seafood, there's usually 5 to 10 pounds of bycatch, which is thrown back dead into the ocean for every single pound of shrimp. So it's the reason I would eat a cow before I would eat a fish today is because even though I won't support it, a cow is raised to be slaughtered and eaten in the world today. And no external animals are killed in the process. If you eat a fish, not only are you ingesting plastic and all of the chemicals that are contained within it, because there's so much plastic pollution down into the microplastics, not only are you ingesting plastic and chemicals, you're also killing significant numbers of other creatures that didn't make it to the market.
Very informative.
That's
We
bycatch.
we in that time have gotten a handful more questions. I'm so glad everybody's so interested on this. Joelle said, I thought that this was illegal. It's hard to enforce laws in the open sea. And we had some questions about farm fish and aquaculture. As Ed said, it takes in a lot of farm fisheries, it takes about 2 pounds of wild fish to feed 1 pound of farmed fish. So although it's sort of greenwashed to be more environmentally friendly, it's not actually so. However, aquaculture is a new industry that I think has incredibly environmentally friendly, beneficial effects on the environment. I highly recommend staying tuned into the aquaculture movement. And as Annette said, specifically kelp farming and seaweed farming is going to be amazing for the planet. It pulls carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. I had a week where I wanted to be a kelp farmer really badly. It's
Me too.
yeah. It's open ocean farming, right? So it's going to pull carbon out of the ocean, and it's an alternative. When you feed cows kelp or seaweed, they don't fart the same amount of methane as their other feeds. So it has a cascade of wonderful effects, and that ties into something else which Ed mentioned, which was he would rather eat a cow than a fish. And while I 100% support you, he's a lifelong vegetarian, so he's not going to do either of those. I would encourage you guys to also be cognizant of your beef consumption, right? Because beef is a huge contributing factor to climate change in general. Because of the methane burps and because of the amount of land they use and the amount of feed they get, they are a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions. So if you can switch beef for chicken or turkey or any, I'm also vegetarian, so I'm not sure what's an equivalent, or like Beyond Meat or Impossible Burgers, any switching you can do can minimize your greenhouse gas impacts, which is super important, especially since it sends a signal to the industries. But something really important you guys can do on this is there is an initiative going through where we're trying to push the government to not subsidize the corn industry, because the corn industry is why the beef industry is so huge. And there is a push to subsidize instead climate-friendly crops. And this, I'm not sure what point the legislation is at right now, but we will be educating our community about that soon and how you can tell your representatives that you want to support this climate-friendly subsidization initiative. Whew, that was a lot. A couple, if you have anything else to say, Ed, we have a couple more questions. I don't know if you want to add anything to those ones.
Well, Shane is right. There are some progressive aquaculture the programs developing. A lot that have been around, however, for a long period of time have proven not to be. The newer ones are okay, but for example, because so many fish are kept in smaller contained areas, they create a tremendous amount of concentrated pollution that they wouldn't normally do if they were in the open ocean. In addition to which, because of the vast numbers of fish that are in some of these farms, it's a breeding ground for viruses and parasites. So again, in addition to all the other things you're consuming, you're getting these fish parasites into your system as well. So it's an ugly business. It's an ugly business.
We had Gilo saying that she recently read some farm-raised salmon are now being fed a more vegetarian diet. I definitely think that's something to look into on a industry-specific or fisherman-specific level. You can't know for the industry as a whole, as Sheena said, but definitely if you are finding a small fishery that's doing good work, you do want to support those industries, right? Because you want to shift the need away from the large trawlers into a more, I'm missing the word. Do you have it, Ed?
I don't.
And the smaller fisheries that are not disturbing the ecosystem.
Yeah, what people don't realize, the greatest ocean predator today are cows. More fish are consumed by cows in the form of livestock feed than sharks. It's amazing.
We're so thankful you guys are sharing these questions. It's something that's not talked about often. So we're very grateful to be able to share this with you guys.
What we really want to convey is that this is a Jewish value. I mean, we're just talking about the spirituality of the sea. Shane and I have other programs that we've done bringing in specific mitzvot like Tsar Baalei Chaim and Baal Tashchit and Shiluach HaKan, which are mitzvot. I mean, on a real substantive tachlis level, how we are observing mitzvot through the protection of the ocean, or just the marine environment in general, because it's the ocean and rivers and lakes and streams. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's Janet here. Do we have a second just to allow Ben to present a company that he's working on personally?
Please. Anybody named Ben Yum is in with me. So
Yeah, my mom actually pointed that out when she shared this with me, that she and my dad called me Ben Yam as a kid, because
that's great.
Family has always been very tied to the sea. And yeah, so recently I moved to Colorado, so unfortunately I don't have as easy access to the sea anymore. But I've really fallen in love with rivers and spent a lot of time both recreating in and caring about rivers. And my partner and I, we started a company called Free Flow Adventure Ponchos, and we're creating towel ponchos that help with drying off and keeping warm after water activities. And we're partnered with a company called the River Network that is doing a lot of conservation efforts regarding restoring river cleanliness and cleanups around that. So I wanted to share that with this group of potential water enthusiasts in case anyone wants to do more swimming and boating, but often finds themselves chilly and cold afterwards. This is a great way to stay warm and change back into your dry clothes after. So I'll share
that with us?
Yeah, right now we're running an Indiegogo, so I shared that link. And then soon we'll have our website live and have the ponchos available to ship out.
Beautiful.
So yeah, you can check out the Indiegogo at that link, or you can email me at benya@freeflowponchos.com.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Did we get them all in the chat, Shayna?
I think so, unless anyone feels like they weren't addressed. Tanita says she already loves the ocean, always felt a spiritual connection. Now to this presentation, she has more of a respect for our waters. We love to hear that.
Great. We would love to see Temple Emunah take part in our reverse Tashlich this year. It's basically just getting members of your synagogue to go to a waterfront location. It can be anywhere locally. And what we ask our participants, and there's usually, we look for a team leader who will spearhead the initiative. And we utilize something called the Marine Debris Tracker, which is a project of National Geographic. We have a page on their app, and we ask people who take part in the program to download the app and to create an account, and it will keep track for you the amount of debris that you personally remove and how much debris that we as Tikkun Hayam collectively remove. And it's a wonderful program, and we would love to have Temple Emunah take part.
That sounds wonderful, Ed. That was actually the first thing I wrote down.
Okay.
So we'll be in touch to get that to happen. Here in on the East Coast, we have a lot of opportunities within our various communities with connected to water very close by. So
Fantastic.
We have one more question from Marilyn. Sorry, Janet, didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
Marilyn wants to know if we can get our program onto the Jewish Broadcasting Syndicate. I'm trying to find it again. Service, Jewish Broadcasting Service.
Actually, they did run a story about our reverse tashlich 2 years ago, and it was fantastic. I mean, every time I turned around, people were sending me, look what was in our local Jewish newspaper. My brother and sister both sent me from the St. Louis Jewish Light. So if we did that, we'd like to be able to get some more of our other initiatives. Shana and I are as Shana said at the very beginning, we don't want to preach to the choir. You know, most Jewish environmental organizations run programs and people come to their programs. We don't want to preach to the choir. We want to reach people who just simply haven't been aware, haven't been exposed, and show everyone how what an intrinsic part of our tradition this is, and that we need to do something about it. I personally believe that the degradation of the marine environment is the greatest existential threat to our planet. And, call me ethnocentric. I will happily accept that moniker. I am ethnocentric. I believe that when Jews get involved in any issue, substantive change takes place. And the simple fact of the matter is the marine environment is not on the radar of the Jewish community. We talk about climate change, which is a huge issue. But if you want to address climate change, the first step is to protect the ocean.
Thank you. It's just so all powerful, and I think each of us are absorbing it in a different way. And I hope that everyone that's been here today will become spokesperson and advocate for the sea.
Can I ask, are your mezuzot that are made out of recycled water bottles, is that on your website also?
It is.
Yeah, I posted a link in the chat. It's repairthesea.org/shop.
Yeah, and it's really, I'm printing mezuzot as we speak. It's set up in my garage. And what we're really excited about is we started the program and there was only one company that we were able to find that produced 3D printer filament made from recycled plastic. And we found them, but it was very difficult because they were in Europe. And only recently have we been able, through a contribution, to purchase the equipment necessary to begin recycling our own plastic. So we're still, it takes a lot of fine tuning. I had no idea how complicated it is, but our other staff member, Josh Keller, is, as Shana said, he's a whiz at 3D printing and technology. And Josh is ironing out all of the kinks, so that we're hoping in the near future that we'll be able to offer different colored mezuzot with different, we just got a special order from Israel because our mezuzot are able to hold a 14 centimeter cloth, the parchment. And we just got a special order from somebody in Israel for a mezuzah that can hold a 20 centimeter cloth. I mean, it's in Israel, they have huge mezuzahs. And so we just created our first custom mezuzah of the 20 centimeter cloth holding mezuzah. So very soon we will be recycling our own plastic and being able to have many more custom mezuzot made for anybody.
That is great. Someone had mentioned that our B'nai Mitzvah students each get a class gift, which is a tzedakah box. Maybe we could transfer it to mezuzah. So.
We would love to have them have our mezuzot as a bar mitzvah gift. That would be great.
No, this was perfect. Ed and Shana, I can't thank you enough for bringing this program to us this morning. timing, working out on Zoom, everything's challenging. But it was just amazing how to present this in such a compact version with just little boxes in front of us. So we really appreciate it. As I said earlier, we'll be making a donation to your fund, and
Thank you.
we, hope to support you in any ways that we can, and also hopefully to participate in the reverse Tashlik program. Hopefully,
Great.
this coming year, we have a year, just to plan, less than a year, but hopefully we can work with our community and our youth on that endeavor. So I will
Great.
be in touch.
We did forget to say that we do have a mailing list, that if you'd like to be put on the mailing list, we don't spam you. We really just put it out when we have something major happening. When Shana has produced a beautiful magazine, we send it out to let people know when that goes out. We'll use that for our YouTube channel to let people know when new videos are created and when we have programs. So if you want to be on that, you can get on our mailing list.
Great. That's super.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us. It's really been a pleasure.
Fabulous.
This is really to our hands. So thank you.
Thank you all so much.
This was a wonderful program.
This is great.
Absolutely fabulous.
Oh, thank you. We've only just started doing it. And, Ira was on our first one. And when he said, he wrote to you, Janet, and then you wrote to us. So this is our first program like this. So I'm glad you like it. And we
Yay, Shana.
Thanks, Marcy. Good to see you.
And
Shana, it's great to see you. And we were here watching with Nana.
I saw.
First time we've seen Nana in over a year. And so it's great to have you virtually part of this reunion.
Nice. I'm so glad it worked out this way.
And great to see you again, Ed. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for helping with this. It's great.
Ed, I texted Valerie Fisher's mom at the beginning, and she said, Ed is so great, as he's great. It's just so funny. But
well, so is Valerie. She's just fantastic.
The kid at Eckerd, his name is Elliot O'Malley.
And he's Jewish?
He's Jewish. Elliot O'Malley, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna write to him as soon as we finish.
Okay.
Eckerd has a great thing where I can just type the name in and their email comes up, so I'll write to him.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway, perfect. Have a wonderful
Janet, thank
day.
you.
Yes, thank you. And Shana, I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. So
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye.